live lecture session. Today we will be following this our course, that is BPSC 143, that is about state politics in India. So today we will be looking at the block 2, that is federalism, and in this block we will be learning about unit 3, that is about union state relations, legislative, economic and administrative, and unit 4, state local relations. We will be completing up to 73rd Amendment Act in unit 4 in today's lecture. So let's start with unit 3, that is union state relations, legislative, economic and administrative. To start with, India is a union of states. It is a federation. So in the federal form of government, political power is divided between the center or union. We can use like it is simultaneously used words like center government and union, and the state or the provincial governments. So this whole unit, this whole federalism is based on the division of power between the center and the states. So both center and states derive their power from the constitution and function in their respective jurisdiction independently. So both center and states, they derive their powers from the Indian constitution, and they have their separate functions to be performed, and they are independent in their own areas. So we have always we need to remember that the constitution is the supreme and is one of the essential features of the federation. So allocation of power between the center and the states is known as division of power. So as we studied that in a federal form of government, the power is divided. So how it is the about the allocation of power, how power is allocated in the union and the states. So we have to know that there is a difference between division of power and separation of powers. So what is division of power? It is about the distribution of power between the union and the states, whereas separation of powers is the separation between the three organs of the state, that is legislature, judiciary and executive. So in this whole unit in federalism, we will be learning about the division of power between the center and the state. So in India, the division of power is allocated in the constitution of the country. It is in the Indian constitution where this division of power is mentioned, and from there we or the union or the states derive their powers. Moving forward, we will be looking in this slide about the making of Indian Federation. The evolution of Indian federal system can be traced back to the provisions that were introduced in the pre-independence era period. So federalism or the concept of federal system was not new after independence, but it existed in bits and pieces from the like before the independence also. So the Government of India Act in 1935, which is one of the very important act of that time. So this act established the federal form of government. So as I told you, this federal form of government or the federal system was not newly adopted just after the independence, but it always existed in our system even before independence. Also, the Cripps Mission of 1942, the Cabinet Mission of 1946, and the objective resolution that was proposed by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in the Constituent Assembly provided for a federal form of government. So, whether it is Cripps Mission or Cabinet Mission or the objective resolution, they all talked about the federal form of government. So, because India's situation on the eve of independence, the Indian federal system needed to have a strong center in relation to the states. Why it is important? Because when India got independent, there was a very difficult time that India was facing to unite the country, because there was a partition between India and Pakistan, and also there were many princely states which were not ready to join India, or there were also cases where they didn't want to join either India or Pakistan. So at that case, if there is a strong union, they can hold the entire country together. So that is why there was a urgent need to have a strong center which can help in uniting the entire country. So the Constituent Assembly felt that to drop the idea to have a strong center would risk India's unity, integrity, and nationhood. In such a difficult time, if there is no strong union which can control the parts of India at that point of time, it would risk India's unity, integrity, and nationhood. So, the framers of the constitution deliberately avoided using the term federation because of all these reasons. And instead of federation, the constitution described India as a union of states. So the word federation is not even mentioned in the Constitution of India. So this is something which you all have to remember, that the word federation is not even mentioned in the Indian Constitution. And Article 1 of our Constitution describes India, that is Bharat, shall be union of states. So moving forward, we will be looking about the legislative relations between the center and the states. So as I all know that the Indian Constitution has established a federal polity. So it has laid down a clear division between the powers of union government and the state governments. So it is the Constitution which gives us a detailed division of powers because there, if it is not written, there will be conflict in the future. So keeping that in mind, the framers of our constitution provided a detailed division of powers. So the constitution contains various provisions to regulate the legislative, executive, and financial relations between the union government and the state governments. So, Article 245 till 255 in Part 11 of India's Constitution spell out legislative relations between the center and the states. So, these articles from starting from 245 till 255, these articles talked about the legislative relations that center and state shares. So, the seventh schedule of India's Constitution contains the allocation of powers and functions between the center and the states. So there is a mention of three lists where it is designated that what functions union should play and what functions state should play. So the three lists are the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. And in further slides, we will be learning about these three lists and how it is different from each other and what are the subjects that these lists contains. Starting from the union list, the Union Parliament has exclusive powers to make legislation on the matters included in the union list. So, the subjects or the matters which is there in the union list has the union government has the exclusive powers to make legislation upon those subjects. The list has 100 subjects at present. So, this is a very important thing which you all should know, that there is 100 subject currently, but there were many changes occurred after independence till today. So you have to keep that in mind. So the union list has 100 subjects at present, and what are all the important subjects that are there in the union list? That is the external affairs, defense, communication, civil aviation, railways, interstate trade and commerce, banking, currency, insurance, etc. That are very crucial subjects in the union list. Now let's move on to the state list. Let's see what are the subjects that is there in the state list. So the state legislature has exclusive power to make legislation on the matters incorporated in the state list. So the state list at present is having 61 subjects, but initially it consisted of 66 subjects. The laws made by a particular state legislature on the subjects in the state list apply only to that particular state. So law and order, police, prison, agriculture, land revenue, local government, public health, state public services, fisheries are the examples of all the subjects that are crucial to state list. Now moving forward to the concurrent list. So both the center and the states can make laws on the subjects included in the concurrent list. So, the concurrent list is a list where states and center together can make law on the subjects that is there in this list. So at present, the concurrent list has 52 subjects, but initially, when the Constitution of India was framed, at that point of time, there were only 47 subjects. From over a period of time, the number of subjects or the matters which was there in the concurrent list increased from 47 to 52. So the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act that was passed in 1976 shifted five subjects to this list from the state list. So as we saw in the previous slide that there was 66 subjects in the state list, but presently there is 61. So those five state list subjects were shifted to this concurrent list. So let's see what are the major things, major subjects that is there in the concurrent list. It is the education, forests, electricity, weights and measures, adulteration, adoption and succession, trade unions are all the important subjects or the matters which is there in the concurrent list on which both center and state can make laws. So we should also remember that in case of conflict between union law and state law, because both union and state can make laws on these subjects, so there might be a situation where there is a conflict between the union and the state law. So it is said or it is written in our constitution that in case of any conflict between union and state, union law prevails over the state law. So this is very important to remember. Now, let's talk about the residuary powers of legislation. Article 248 of our constitution deals with the residuary powers of legislation. So the residuary powers legislation is given to center. So all the residuary powers lies with center and the Parliament of India alone can make legislation on the subjects not included in any of above three lists. So what is residuary powers? It is those matters or those subjects that is not there in the above three list, or we can say the union, state and concurrent list. So whatever the subjects which is not there in those lists, it is residuary powers and it lies with the center, and it is the Parliament of India which can make law or legislation in these subjects. So these residuary power consist of power to levy any residuary taxes also. Now, let's move forward to center's control and supremacy over state legislation. We will be seeing how there is a supremacy of center over the state. So, the central government has supremacy over states under certain exceptional situations. So, there are some exceptional situations in which center is more superior to the state legislation. So, the Constitution empowers the Union Parliament to make laws on the subjects incorporated in the state list in an emergency. This is a very important thing which we all should know, that during an emergency, the Constitution empowers the Union Parliament to take over the subjects from the state list. So, as per Article 249 of India's Constitution, if the Rajya Sabha, because of nation's interest, passes a resolution by a majority of two-thirds of its members requesting Parliament make legislation on the state list subject, Parliament makes such laws. So, Article 249 says that if Rajya Sabha feels that there is a need for, or there is a nation's interest is lies in a subject, they can pass a resolution by two-third majority. Similarly, in Article 250 of their constitution empowers the Parliament to make laws on any stateless subject during national emergency, as I already told you. It is the Article 250 which empowers the union government. Now, as per Article 252, if two or more states legislatures request Union Parliament through a resolution to make a law on a particular subject mentioned in the state list, which is useful for states, Parliament makes such laws. So this is also very important. If there is a request coming from two or more states for making a law, or because there is a need for the states to do it, so At that point of time, the union has power to, the parliament rather has power to make laws on those subjects. Article 253 authorizes the parliament to make law for the whole or any part of India's territory for implementing any treaty, international agreement, or convention with any other country or countries. So, if there is a treaty or agreement which Indian states need to sign, or there is a need of there is like we can say that there is an agreement which Indian states are part with. So at that point of time, the parliament can make law on any part of India's territory for implementing these treaties or agreements. So during the proclamation of president's rule in a state under Article 356, this is very important of the Indian Constitution article. So the Union Parliament make laws over the subjects included in the state. So in a case where there is president's rule in a state, at that situation, the Union Parliament can take over the subjects which were included in the state list. Similarly, Article 200 deals with the governor's power to assent given to the bills passed by the state legislatures. The governor may reserve specific bills passed by the state legislature for the consideration of the President of India. Now, let's move on to the administrative relations between the center and the states. So, the Constitution of India established a strong central government with many unitary features. This is very important to know. In normal circumstances, state governments exercise their constitutional powers within their jurisdiction. The executive power of the center covers the entire India, and similarly, the state executive power extends to its territory relating to the stateless subjects. However, the union government exercises control over the state's executive powers in several ways. So, there are many ways through which the union government can exercise control over the state's executive powers. So, let's see Article 162 of the Indian Constitution. The union government's executive power extends to all the subjects on which Parliament can make laws. So, Article 162 says that. Now, moving forward, we will be looking how center is playing a role with the states and how center's direction to the state is important, and it is written in the Indian Constitution. So, Article 256 of the Indian Constitution entrusts that every state's executive power is to be exercised in such a manner as to ensure compliance with the laws of the Union Parliament. So, there is a compulsion on state that they should exercise their executive power in such a manner so that their law or their executive power should be compliance with the laws made by the Union Parliament. Also, Article 257 empowers the union government or the center government to give necessary direction to a state for that purpose. So, union can give directions to the state for that purpose, and this direction in this regard can be issued about the communication relating to national and military significance. So, if there is a concern of national and military significance, in these matters, state can give directions to a state. The Constitution also spells out the implication of non-compliance of center's directions by the states. So, according to Article 365, if a state fails to comply with any direction of union government, the president can hold that the state government is unable to carry on according to the provision of Constitution. So, if a state fails to comply with whatever the union government's direction is, so at that situation, the president can hold the state government is like president can hold that the state government is unable to carry on according to the provisions of the Constitution. Consequently, what will happen? It can lead to the imposition of president's rule under Article 356, which we have already talked about in the previous slides. Now, let's talk about the proclamation of emergency under Article 352 and 356. So, Article 352 empowers the President of India to declare a national emergency when the security of or part of India is in danger by war, external aggression, or internal armed rebellion. So during the national emergency, the center has the executive power to direct any state regarding the manner in which the executive power is to be exercised. Also, the center can proclaim president's rule under Article 356 of India's constitution if there is a breakdown of constitutional machinery in a state. So, this Article 356, that it talks about the president's rule in a state, is considered to be one of the most controversial and most misused provision of India's constitution. So, you should all remember this because this Article 356 plays a very important role in India's politics. Moving forward, we will be looking about the delegation of powers from center to states. So the president may assign specific functions to the state government or its officers, to which the executive power of the union extends with some conditions or conditionally. That is written in Article 258. Similarly, there is an appointment of governor and role of governor, which also plays a very important role or the power balance between the center and the states. So the governor is the constitutional head of the state in India, which is Union of States. So the president appoints the governor of a state, or the governor performs functions as the agent of the center and submits period reports to the center. So the governor is the constitutional head of the state. So he has a role to play and he performs the function as the agent of the center and submit period reports to the center. Governor exercises certain discretionary powers, which we will be looking. What are those discretionary powers? So the formation of the government after the general election, that is one of the power of the governor. Choosing the chief ministerial candidate, determining the timing for proving majority in legislative assemblies, and give assent to bills or reserving bills for the president of India. So now we will be looking about the water resources and national highways, how it also an important part of the center-state relations. So Parliament can declare highways and waterways as national highways and waterways. So this is the power which is lies with the Parliament. So Article 262 deals with waters of interstate rivers and river valleys. Parliament can also frame the rules and regulations regarding disputes between two states or among the few states concerning water distribution. So, Parliament has the power to frame the rules and regulation regarding if there is a dispute between two states upon the river sharing, and also it is the Parliament which works on this and which brings rules and regulations. Now, let's talk about the Interstate Council. Article 263 gives powers to the president to appoint an interstate council to inquire about the disputes that may have arisen between the states for following reasons. So, to investigate and discuss subjects in which the states or the union and states have a common interest, to make recommendations upon these subjects, and in particular, recommendation for the better coordination and action in respect of these subjects. So let's talk about the All India services. Both the center and the states control the All India services. However, the center has the ultimate control. So it is the center which ultimately controls the All India service officers, and whereas states exercise immediate and relatively less control if we compare the powers of the center and the state. Now, let's talk about center-state financial relations, which is very important because political autonomy of these states or the federal units is incomplete if it's not given the financial autonomy. So, the political autonomy of the federal units is incomplete without financial autonomy, and the constitution has provisions about distribution of these financial resources to the states. Article 268 and 293 contained in part 12 of the constitution deal with center-state financial relations. So how the finances will be divided between the center and the states is all there written in our constitution in Article 268 and 293. As per the constitutional mandate, no tax shall be levied or collected except by the authority of law. So this is very important, that no tax can be levied except by the authority of law. So the parliament has exclusive power to levy taxes on subjects incorporated in the union list, and the state legislature has exclusive power to levy taxes on state list subjects. So whatever there is in the union list, the parliament can have exclusive powers to levy taxes on those subjects. Similarly, in this whatever there in the subjects in the state list, it is the state legislature which has exclusive power to levy taxes on those subjects. So both union and state governments can levy taxes on the subjects enumerated in the concurrent list. So all the subjects which is there in the concurrent list, so both center and states can levy taxes on them. So the residuary power of taxation lies with the parliament only. And already we have learned that the residuary powers lies with the parliament. Similarly, whatever there is in the residuary list, the powers of taxation lies with the parliament. So the 101st Amendment replaced various central and state taxes such as excise duty, service tax, sales tax, entry tax, and entertainment tax, etc., and a uniform goods and service tax, popularly known as GST, for the whole country. So we will be learning about these new changes or the 101st Amendment in our further slides. Let's talk about grant in aid. So besides sharing the tax revenues with states, the center gives grant in aid to the needy states from its resources. So the center can give grant in aid to the states which are in need and which needs the resources from the center. So Article 275 of the Indian Constitution empowers the parliament in this regard. So this article empowers the parliament to give grant in aid to the needy states. So under Article 282, both the center and the states can make grants for any public purpose, and the center gives discretionary grants to states under this category also for public purposes. Now let's talk about the Finance Commission. The Finance Commission, what is that? It is a constitutional body created to suggest center-state financial relations, mainly recommendation on distributing tax revenues between the union and the states. So Article 280 of India's Constitution empowers the President of India to appoint a Finance Commission to make recommendations on the following. So it is the President of India, and the power is given to President of India through Article 280 for appointing a Finance Commission. And what are the recommendations of Finance Commission? What is the work of Finance Commission? It is the distribution of net proceeds of taxes between the center and the states, and principles that govern the grant in aid of the revenues of the state out of the consolidated fund of India. Now, center-state financial relations. Here we will be talking about the Niti Aayog. So what is the full form of Niti? It is National Institution for Transforming India, Aayog. So the union government scrapped the Planning Commission and established National Institution for Transforming India, Niti Aayog, in its place with a cabinet resolution in 2014. So many times it is asked that how Niti Aayog is formed. So it is formed, or it is done through a cabinet resolution in the year 2014. It aimed to evolve a vision of national development priorities, strategies with the active involvement of states. So Niti Aayog talks about the active involvement of states in national development priorities and strategies. So to promote cooperative federalism through planned support initiatives and mechanisms by promoting the involvement of states in the economic policy making process. So now let's talk about GST and how GST is a recent development in Indian Constitution. So the notion of goods and service tax is not recent to India. So we should know that this GST is not at all a very new concept to India. It was also talked about in the previous years as well. So the former Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, introduced the idea of this GST and set up a committee also in the year 2000 to plan and develop a design for the GST in India. So during the rule or during the tenure rather of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, this GST was talked about and was it was introduced, and there was also a committee which was formed for this purpose. In 2003, the Government of India formed a task force on fiscal responsibility and budget management. So the task force recommended replacing the existing tax schemes by introducing a comprehensive tax on all goods and services, replacing the center and state level value added taxes. So the committee also recommended the replacement of all indirect taxes except the customs duty with a uniform tax. Now let's talk about the 101st Amendment Act 2016. So the Constitution Amendment is required to change the tax structure and introduce GST, Goods and Service Tax. Such an amendment can empower the center and states to levy and collect GST. To deal with these aspects, the Constitution's 122nd Amendment Bill, introduced in the Lok Sabha in December 2014. So the bill was ratified by the required number of seats and received the President's assent on 8th of September 2016 and enacted as the 101st Constitution Amendment Act 2016. So the center and the state's financial powers are distinguished in the Constitution without overlapping the respective spheres. So let's talk about what are the compositions of GST Council. The 101st Amendment to India's Constitution inserted Article 279A to empower India's President to establish the GST Council. Accordingly, the GST Council was established in September 2016. The Goods and Service Tax Council consists of the following members. So these are the members which the GST Council consists of. The first one is the Union's Finance Minister as a chairperson. Second is the Union Minister of State, who is in charge of Revenue or Finance. And the Minister in charge of Finance or Taxation or any other minister nominated by each state government are members of GST Council. So this is how the GST Council is presented or GST Council is formed. So the goods and service tax on interstate trade or commerce supplies shall be levied and collected by the union government. So this is very important, and such tax shall be apportioned between the union and the states in the manner as may be provided by Parliament by the law on the GST Council's recommendation. So the GST Council recommends the GST rate, exemption and thresholds, taxes to be subsumed, and other matters. On the GST Council's recommendations, Parliament by law provides compensation for 5 years to the states for loss of revenue due to implementation of goods and service tax. So this is very important that the councils recommended that the Parliament should provide or should bring a law which can say that how to compensate the states for the next 5 years because of the loss of revenue that they will be facing after implementing the goods and service tax or the GST. So with introduction of GST, states lost their taxation rights except on petroleum, alcohol and stamp duty. So these are the taxation rights that states has. One is on petroleum, on alcohol and stamp duty. Now let's talk about the attempts to reform center-state relations, how the efforts were made to reform the center-state relations in our country, and for that Sarkaria Commission plays a very important role. So on 9th of June 1983, the central government appointed a commission to review the center-state relations under the chairmanship of Justice R.S. Sarkaria and with Shri B. Sivaraman and Dr. S.R. Sen as its members. So why this is known as Sarkaria Commission? Because the commission was named after its chairman. So it was chaired by R.S. Sarkaria, and that is why the commission is named by Sarkaria Commission. So Sarkaria Commission submitted its report in January 1988 and it contains 247 recommendations. So this committee, the Sarkaria Commission recommended 247 things or 247 changes for the reforming the center state relations. So the commission did not favor structural changes, and nor did it recommend diluting the central government's powers. So it is important recommendation is the establishment of the interstate council under article 263. So what is important about this commission is that they recommended for an interstate council under Article 263. Also, on the Sarkaria Commission's recommendations, the National Front government established the Interstate Council in the year 1990. Now, let's talk about the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, NCRWC. So, the BJP-led government, or the BJP-led National Democratic Alliance government, on 22nd of February 2000 appointed a National Commission to review the working of Constitution of India. The chairman of this commission was Justice M.N. Venkatchalaya, the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And pertinent to mention here, Justice R.S. Sarkaria was also the member of National Commission to review the working of the Constitution. Now let's talk about Madan Mohan Panchi Commission, which is also very important. So on 27th of April 2007, the Government of India constituted a commission on center-state relations under Justice Madan Mohan Panchi, former Chief Justice of India, to examine center-state relations. So the commission examined and reviewed the legislative, administrative and financial relations, role of the governors, that how the governors are playing role in the state, and emergency provisions, economic and social planning. Panchayati Raj was also an important thing to be examined by this commission. Also, the resource sharing and interstate river water disputes. So these are the areas, or these are the matters that this Madan Mohan Panchi Commission examined over time. Now, let's move forward to our unit 4, that is state local relations. In this unit, I will be covering in today's lecture up to 73rd Amendment Act, and in our next lecture, we will be moving forward to the 74th Amendment. So now, introducing the unit, there are two local governments. So in our previous unit, we were talking about the union and state relations. In this unit, we will be talking about state and local relations. So this is what these units are separated from each other, because the first unit, the unit 3, is about center state relations, and this unit is about state and the local governments relation. So there are two types of local governments, one in the rural areas, that is called panchayats, and the urban areas, that is called municipalities under Indian Constitution. So these are the terms used for the local governments at rural and the urban areas. So initially, the Constitution provided a clear division of powers between the center and the states. So as we have already learned that there is a clear division of powers between the center and the states, later the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts 1992 set up 3 tiers of local governments. So now there are 3 tiers of the local government which we've been learning over time. And the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992, this is very important thing you should all know, because it is all related with the Panchayati Raj institutions, which is playing a very important role in the local government. So this 73rd Amendment gave the panchayats, or the rural local governments, constitutional status by adding a new part 9 and 11 schedule to the Constitution. So similarly, the 74th Amendment Act 1992 gave the constitutional status to municipalities by adding a new part 9A and 12th schedule to the Constitution. So the Constitution provides for a 3-tier Panchayati Raj system in every state, as we learnt in our previous slide. So what are these 3-tier Panchayati Raj system? The first level is the panchayats at the village level. Second is the block or taluk panchayats at the intermediate level, and Zilla Parishad or panchayats at district level. So apart from rural local bodies, it also provides 3 types of urban bodies in every state. So as we learned that there are 2 types of local government, one in the rural areas and the other one in the urban areas. So in urban areas, the first type of Rural local body is the Nagar Panchayat for a transitional area, Municipal Council for smaller urban area, and Municipal Corporation for a larger urban area. Now, how we will be learning about the framing of India's constitution and Panchayati Raj. So, the task before the Constituent Assembly members was to provide a vision for the economic restructure of India. So, economic reconstruction implies, so we will be learning what this means economic reconstruction. It implies the transforming India's rural economy, agriculture, and industry through a scientific and planned development model. So, this is what economic reconstruction means. So, it also presupposes that building up an economic system that promotes people's welfare, removes inequalities, fulfills basic needs of life, and ensures a good quality of life. So Mahatma Gandhi was a firm believer of Gram Swaraj, and in this context, the Gandhian followers in the Constituent Assembly underlined the significance of the Indian indigenous traditions and decentralized polity based on village panchayat. So this was the starting from where village panchayats was introduced. Now, let's talk about the milestones in local governments in India. So, Community Development Program and National Extension Services. So, this Community Development Program was launched on October 2nd, 1952 to mark Gandhi's birth anniversary. So, it was the first program following independence aiming to promote people's participation in local development activities. So, village became a major focus of attention in its first 5-year plan. And on October 2nd, 1953, the next year, National Extension Service was launched. And it was implemented in the areas that were not covered in the Community Development Program. So, what was the main aim of the NES or the National Extension Services? The main aim was to extend scientific and technical help to the villagers to improve their economic and social conditions. So, what was the goal of this NES? To promote or to improve the conditions of the poor people who are not very economically and socially strong. Now, the other very important milestone in local governments in India is Balwant Rai Mehta Committee, which was formed or which was appointed in the year 1957. This is a very important committee which suggested or recommended many important things. And the Planning Commission that was appointed on 16th of January 1957, a committee known as Balwant Rai Mehta Committee after the name of its chairman Balwant Rai Mehta, to examine the impact of CDPs and NES. In the previous slide, we learned about the CDPs and NES, and this committee was formed to see or examine what were the impacts the India witnessed because of CDPs and NES. So it was named Balwant Rai Mehta Committee after the name of its chairman, who was Balwant Rai Mehta. And this committee recommended establishing a three-tier Panchayati Raj system. So, what were the three tiers that was recommended by this committee? It was the Gram Panchayat at the village level, Panchayat Samiti at the block or taluk level, and Zilla Parishad at the district level. So, the other significant recommendation of this committee were that the government should divest itself completely of specific duties and responsibilities and develop them to a body that will have the entire charge of all development work within its jurisdiction. So this is a very significant recommendation by the Balwant Rai Mehta Committee, which we all should remember because it's very important. So the government should reserve with it only the functions relating to guidance, supervision, and higher planning. So what it recommended that government should involve in guidance, supervision, and higher planning. Otherwise, all the specific duties, responsibilities should be given to the uh, village level, and the entire charge of development within its jurisdiction should be appointed to the Panchayati Raj system. So it also recommended that an efficient self-governing institution to be set up with its jurisdiction coextensive with the development block at the block level. So, indirect elections from the panchayatis should constitute the panchayati samiti. So, this is what this Balwant Rai Mehta committee recommended, and it is one of the most important recommendations considered in the panchayati raj system. Now let's come to Ashok Mehta Committee, which was appointed in the year 1977. So, as we see, it is totally 20 years later that Ashok Mehta Committee was established, and this time it is the Janta government which, after coming to power after the emergency period, it appointed a committee on Panchayati Raj institutions, and the chairman of this committee was Ashok Mehta, and because of after the name of the chairman, it is named as the Ashok Mehta Committee on December 1977. So, why it was appointed? It was appointed to suggest measures to revive and strengthen the Panchayati Raj system in India. So, the committee submitted its report in August 1978 with 132 recommendations to revive and strengthen the Panchayati Raj system. So, these were the recommendations. So, the committee's key recommendations were, we will be talking about what were the recommendations. The two-tier system should replace the three-tier system of Panchayati Raj. So, Ashok Mehta committee recommended that there should not be three-tier of government on Panchayati Raj, but two-tier system. And that is the Zilla Parishad at the district level, and Mandal Panchayati or Parishad consist of few villages covering a population of 15,000 to 20,000. So, Ashok Mehta committee wanted two-tier Panchayati Raj system. A district should be the first point of decentralization, and Zilla Parishad should be the executive body responsible for planning at the district level. So, the Panchayati Raj institution should have power of taxation to mobilize their financial resources. So, these are the very important suggestions and recommendations given by the Ashok Mehta committee. Next is the milestones in local government 85 to look into various aspects of Panchayati Raj institutions and its existing administrative arrangements for poverty alleviation programs. So, this committee was to see whether the Panchayati Raj institutions is working on its and whether the existing administrative arrangements for poverty alleviation programs are working properly or not. So, what are the major suggestions by this committee? So, the Panchayati Raj institutions have to be activated and provided with all the necessary support to the Panchayati Raj institutions at the district, taluk and village level, should be assigned local planning work, implementation and monitoring of the rural development programs. Now, after GVK Rao committee, LM Singhvi committee was set up. So, this LM Singhvi committee was set up by the Rajiv Gandhi government in the year 1986, and the aim of this committee was to study the problems faced by Panchayati Raj institutions. So, since inception, what are the problems that Panchayati Raj institutions is facing? It was the concern of this LM Singhvi committee, which was appointed by Rajiv Gandhi government at that point of time in the year 1986. So, the significant recommendations was that. So, this committee also gave some recommendations, and what were those? It was that local self-government should be given constitutional status by incorporating a new chapter in India's constitution. So, they recommended that this local self-government should be given a constitutional status. And the committee also recommended the non-involvement of political parties in the panchayat elections. So this is one of the major recommendation that was given by this LM Singhvi committee, that there should not be any involvement of political parties in the panchayat elections. Now let's talk about the Constitution's 73rd Amendment Act 1992. So the Panchayati Raj system in India was inaugurated by the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru on 2nd of October 1959, first at Nagaur in Rajasthan. So after that, after Rajasthan, different states implemented this Panchayati Raj system in their states. However, until 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992, The Panchayati Raj institutions did not acquire viable and responsive institutions due to lack of constitutional status. So it is after the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, which we are reading now, that give Panchayati Raj institutions a responsive institutions. Okay? Apart from that, the absence of regular elections, inadequate representation of weaker section such as the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and women, inadequate devolution of powers and lack of financial resources are significant limitations of the Panchayati Raj system. So these were the problems that our Panchayati Raj system was facing at that point of time, that there was an absence of regular elections, there was inadequate representation of the weaker section of the society, that is the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes or the women, and there was inadequate devolution of powers, there was lack of financial resources and several other limitations. So the PRIs or the Panchayati Raj institutions were granted constitutional status on April 24, 1993, with the passage of the 73rd Constituent Amendment Act 1992 during the tenure of P.V. Narasimha Rao as Prime Minister. So since then, April 24th is celebrated as National Panchayati Raj Day. Please note it down. It is very important that April 24th is celebrated as National Panchayati Raj Day. The local government is a state subject in Schedule 7 of the Indian Constitution. Rajasthan leads the way in accepting the scheme of democratic decentralization of a three-tier system of local bodies at the village, block and district levels. Now, let's talk about what are the mandatory provisions of the 73rd Amendment Acts. So, among the key features of 73rd Amendment Act are mandatory provisions and voluntary provisions. So, the 73rd Amendment Act 1992 provides for mandatory provisions and voluntary provisions, with which we see what are the mandatory provision and what are the voluntary provisions. So, the mandatory provisions of the Panchayati Raj Act are those that strengthen the participation of people at the local level. So the mandatory provisions aims to strengthen the participation of people at the local level. So what are they? They are the organization of Gram Sabha, the establishment of panchayat at intermediate or middle or district levels, direct elections in all seats. This is very important, that how direct elections in all seats in the panchayat at all levels, indirect elections to the post of chairperson of panchayats at intermediate and district levels, 21 years of minimum age for contesting elections to panchayat. So these are all the mandatory provisions for the 73rd Amendment provides for the Panchayati Raj institutions. Also, another mandatory provision is the reservation of seats and chairperson offices for SCs and STs at all levels, reservation of one-third seats and chairperson offices for women, fixed 5 years tenure for panchayats at all levels, and holding fresh elections in case of dissolution of any panchayat. So these are very important things that the mandatory provisions talks about. Also, the Amendment Act stipulates that establishing two state level commissions. So State Election Commission, an independent body to supervise and conduct the elections to local bodies, and State Finance Commission to review the panchayat's financial position, which is very important to run or to see whether the public work is going on well or not. Finance is very important. So State Finance Commission was also formed to review the panchayat's financial position and recommend the governor distribution and determination of taxes, duties, tolls, fees between the state and the panchayats, and a grant in aid to the panchayats from the consolidated fund of the state. So these are the mandatory provisions for written in the 73rd Amendment Act. Moving forward to the voluntary provisions, the Panchayati Raj Act has some voluntary provisions also. What are they? They are providing representation to the parliament and state legislation members in the panchayat falling within their constituency. So, other one is providing reservation of seats and chairperson for the backward classes, in local bodies at all levels. The third voluntary provision is the granting of power to the Gram Sabha, the electorate of a village panchayat with powers and functions at the village level to functions as an institution of self-government. Devolution next is the devolution of powers and authority to panchayats for development and social justice, dealing with 29 subjects which are listed in the 11th schedule of the Constitution of India, which we will be learning next. So, granting financial powers to the panchayats aimed to increase financial resources by authorizing them to levy, collect, and appropriate taxes, duties, tolls, and fees. Similarly, all states have enacted new acts and incorporated changes in their existing acts in conformity with the 73rd Amendment Act, as a result of which they now have a uniform three-tier structure of local government. So the Constitution 73rd Amendment Act 1992 added the 11th schedule to the Constitution, which is a very important point to be noted, with effect from April 24, 1993. So it deals with the provisions that specify the powers, authority, and responsibilities of the panchayat, and it has the 29 subjects. So what are these 29 subjects that it talks about? That is agriculture, including the agricultural extension, land improvement, implementation of land reforms, land consolidation and soil conservation, minor irrigation, water management and watershed development. Also, it talks about the animal husbandry, dairying and poultry. Fisheries is also an important point which it talks about. Social forestry and farm forestry, minor forest produce, small scale industries, including the food processing industries. Khadi, village and cottage industry is also a part of this. And this is very important because Mahatma Gandhi also talked about the importance of the khadi and cottage industries. So, in all these 29 subjects, this is also included. Similarly, rural housing, drinking water. Drinking water is very important because in many parts of our country there is a lack of safe drinking water. So this is also a part where the Panchayati Raj institution works. Similarly, fuel and fodder, roads, culverts, bridges, ferries, waterways, and other means of communication. So it also give attention to the means of communication in a village and in a area. Also, rural electrification, including distribution of electricity, non-conventional energy resources, poverty alleviation program. This is also very important because in rural areas, poverty alleviation program works wonders. So this is also a very important subject in this list, along with education, including primary and secondary schools, technical training and vocational education. Apart from that, there is adult and non-formal education as well. There is libraries, which is also a very important subject in this list, along with the cultural activities, markets and fairs. And these cultural activities and markets and fair also provides a source of income to many rural people over time. So these markets and fairs is a boon to the rural people. Along with that, health and sanitation, which includes hospitals, primary health centers, and dispensaries, also one of the most important thing that this list talks about. Family welfare is also there, and also women and child development. So these are all the major things that this list talks about. And there is social welfare, which is also part of this list, including the welfare of the handicapped and the mentally retarded. So it not only talks about normal human being and all the welfare of the people, but it also talk about the disadvantaged people, like people who are differently abled. So it also talks about that and takes care of them. So welfare of the weaker sections, and in particular the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. So they also talk about the welfare of these marginalized communities of the societies, which are scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. It also talks about the public distribution system. of the resources, and this is very important. Also, there is a maintenance of community assets that in the 11th schedule of the Indian Constitution. So, with this, our this class is over, and in the next class we will be covering the other half part of unit 4, that is the constitutional 74th constitutional amendment act in this chapter, and also we will be learning about unit 5, that is state autonomy. So with this, thank you.